Welcome to True Culture.
Building Success from Within, the podcast where we uncover the real strategies behind building teams that thrive and workplaces that people admire and are proud to be part of. I'm your host, Robert Cook, CEO of True Colors International. And with decades of experience in leadership, consulting, and cultural transformation, I will bring you real stories and practical tools to help you shape the culture you've always wanted. Let's get started.
Welcome to podcast. I'm your host, Robert Cook. Today I'm joined by Hanna Smith. Hanna is the Chief People Officer at Tillo and an award-winning people leader, known for building high-performing cultures where both people and businesses thrive. Throughout her career, which we'll get into, Hanna has helped startups and scale-ups navigate rapid growth and leadership development, organizational change, and cultural transformation. That's why I invited her here to talk with us. She has a leadership philosophy that centers around a powerful idea. It's simplicity and human connection. Those are the core, the foundations of sustainable business success. So Hanna, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. I dug into your background. I read all the crazy moves you've had. You've built a whole career across startups and scale-ups, and clearly always on the people side. So give us a little bit of your background. What drew you into people leadership and how'd you get there?
So when I finished college, actually, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I took some time out. I knew that I wanted to work in a meaningful environment, but as an 18-year-old, I didn't really know what that meant. So I started working for a company, as a small company. It was 20 people, 25 people, doing the office management and looking after various pieces of the business. So when you're working for a company that small, you do things from payroll to contracts to customer care, you do a bit of everything, right? And I really cut my teeth in a work environment there. But it was very challenging, really challenging environment. I didn't know any better, my first job from college. And I was there a good couple of years. And the founders, the owners that I was working with, they did not know how to handle their pressure. And they were very vocal when they were stressed. It was a very challenging environment for predominantly a young staff set to work in. And there
What was the industry?
It was actually a body jewelry manufacturer. It's my colourful past. Yes, body jewelry manufacturer. So we were a wholesaler. And we had a factory in Asia. We used to import the jewelry. Some of the jewelry was made in the UK. And then we used to sell it to lots of different brands, so high street brands. And so we were the middle person, if you like. And it was a challenging environment. It was actually really fast paced. As you can imagine, 25 years ago or so, everything was very manual. Invoices, everything was wet signature, a lot of paperwork, a lot of filing, but there was a lot of pressure because there was certain times a year where we had to do event shows and things like that. So the pressure was up and we had to do a lot of overtime. And when we were going through a lot of pressure, the founders and the owners were just not very nice, to be very frank. Long story short, they were just not very nice and they did not treat anyone very nicely. And there were times where I would be crying on the way to work. I felt I did, my one of the founders at the time used to comment on the way that I looked, on my body sometimes. And as a young woman who didn't really know any better, you don't really know how to handle that. And then after I was there a couple of years, and it got to the point where I just thought, I do not want to work in this environment anymore. This is not right. So I made the decision to leave. They were not kind about the fact that I was leaving and made it very difficult. They tried to withhold pay and I sued them. And I wasn't a lawyer. I did not have a legal background. I wasn't represented by a lawyer. It was myself and my father. We went to an employment tribunal and I did my own research into employment law, but I came from this belief that surely people shouldn't have to work in an environment like this. We live to work and work to live, but people shouldn't have to tolerate this kind of behavior. And Thankfully, I won. It was a clear case. It wasn't, I can't even remember how much money it was. It was, I don't know, a couple of weeks pay.
Right.
But it was the justification of actually, I'm not just doing this for me. I'm doing this for my colleagues and my friends that I left behind. And they need to know that this is not how you treat people.
Yeah.
And I got a really keen interest in employment law. And I decided to take a vocational route of studying for vocational law and for employment law and get involved in, back then it was called personnel. I don't know if it was that long ago, like in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
in the 90s, it was called personnel and then it changed to HR and now it's people. But yeah, and I learned that. I put myself through college. I was supported through college. One company that I worked for helped me through that, which was really encouraging and really supportive. And I worked and I just had this ethos that I want to create a great place to work. I for myself, first and foremost, but
Yeah.
also I thought surely there's a big connection between how people show up at work, how they're treated, and the impact on the business. But I didn't really know joining all the dots at that time. And throughout my career, I've just been attracted to doing things better and doing things a more forward-thinking way, really, and looking at the 20 years ago or so. What did Google do? Oh, hold on a minute. Okay, maybe we can do something like that. Or
Yeah.
what does that person say? And how does that affect that? And that person really likes working where they're working. And what are they doing? Could we adjust some of that to suit our lifestyle? So yeah, that's how I got into it.
And that's great. And always stayed, thus always stayed in personnel or
Yes.
HR and build that.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did. For at the very beginning of my career, I worked in the public sector, which was a really good grounding on how to do things very slowly. No, I wasn't forward thinking. That was very bureaucratic, as you can imagine, and it was very academic, as you can imagine. But it was also, it was good learning. It made me definitely understand that I don't want to work in that environment. I wanted to work in this fast-paced tech kind of scale up, that kind of energy. Yeah, so it was good grounding.
Okay, so let's talk about culture. You were 21 years old. You realized that culture matters because you were
Yeah,
in a bad culture. You got your training, and you're off to your next place to try to talk about some of the tools that you used. We talked about your FCIPD member, or it's the
yeah,
SHRM equivalent over
yeah.
there. But what are some of the tools you've used to help drive culture in the various roles you've been in?
I guess the first significant role that I was in, the first tech company that I worked in was Magix, and I came in as HR director. And to help scale the company, it was privately owned, and I was their first HR person, and they were going through an assessment criteria, which was a recognition for for your people philosophy, if you like. And it was called Investors in People. And back then, Investors in People was a very heavy bureaucratic framework of, have you got this process in place? Have you got this process in place? Is this authority and performance, from performance management to feedback to the whole kind of circle, end-to-end employee life cycle? But it was very heavy. But we didn't know any better. So we used that to be assessed. But really, what it didn't do, it acted as a tick sheet of, this is what you should have in place, and this makes you get the accolade of being Investors in People. But what it didn't measure is the impact it had on the people, or actually did it make a difference? And
Hmm.
so that was the first kind of insight that we had. And then there was different standards of Investors in People. You could get a pass, or then there was a bronze, silver, gold, platinum standard. And we wanted to elevate. We knew that actually we had to invest in our managers. That was apparent to me very early on in my career, just purely for the fact that there's one of me and there's 20 managers and there's 100 people that you
What,
have to manage through your people managers.
what do they
And
need? Soft skills training or hard skills?
they're both, actually, I would say. I think, and I don't think this what I'm about to say, I don't think this is going to be a surprise to anyone, is that there are a big portion of people managers that fall into that as well. They happen to be the most technical person in the business, or they might have the most tenure, and the natural progression for them is to take on people management responsibilities.
Yes.
But of course, that that is a skill in itself. And I would argue some of that's innate. Not
Hmm.
everyone is going to be a good people manager. Not everyone wants to be a good people manager. But if you don't invest in that layer of how to manage people, even the emotional intelligence side, you're not going to get the right result. And so back then, I learned very quickly that the people manager or the middle manager, it's almost like the linchpin of your mission statement and impact of bottom line. Because if you don't get that layer, it's not going to work. It's going to be very painful.
Hey man, I agree to that. Your comment's almost a shill for the training type of things that we do at True Color. You guys haven't done yet, but so you did do your assessment, and it's interesting. Your primary color was bright blue, which means you carry the empath. So you're doing the work that you love based on your internal being. So well done.
Thank
Are
you.
there any other big tools you stood out that you used in the past or use currently?
I think engagement tools are really important. So early in my career, we would do an annual employee survey.
Yeah.
And I think there were times when we were doing it, often we'd launch it just after the bonus period. So engagement was high and it was like a false positive. But over the years, we've transitioned to more of a pulse survey because actually it's more important that we've got a finger on the pulse. So now we do a quarterly survey on many different facets of engagement. But it's not just that pulse survey that matters, it's actually everything in between. So the real data of talking to people, of regular one-to-ones, of regular touch points, and that
Mm,
kind of real-time feedback that you get outside of the pulse survey. I think
mm.
that's a really good indicator. So that's a good tool I would advocate for. And I think I've always used that kind of feedback mechanism throughout my career. Obviously, it's refined over the years with technology, with automation. We can do it much smarter, but it's also what you do with that data. No,
So talk to me about the difference of large and small and high growth versus a more mature company. How do
I
you?
think the difference between large and small, I think that's where you have to focus on where your advocates are and where your culture carriers are and your middle managers or the people that are high impact or perhaps the most controversial people, the ones that
Mm,
you need to win over first. You're gonna find those people quite quickly who are the ones that you need to talk to. I think it's a mistake, even if you're in a big company, it's a mistake just to sit behind a desk and not actually talk to the people. Regardless whether you're in HR, whether you're in a COO or a CFO, you need to understand how the bottom line operates. There'll be lots of different ways you do that, but I'd advocate whether it's just a coffee and connect or something with some random people every now and again. But to be open and have an almost open door policy,
yeah.
it works. But yes, there are different nuances between the size of the business or how real that can become. But when you are working in 100 to 500 people, it's possible to do that. It's busy because you're still building and you're still scaling and you're perfecting your approach. But
Mm,
that's why you should be really in touch with how it's affecting the bottom line. Because
mm.
otherwise, you could have all of these models that you want to implement, you could have all these frameworks, but you will not know what people think about that. You need to be able to sell and take that feedback when it's not working or if it needs refining. And otherwise, it's just going to be one of those initiatives that's when you see company values that are just on the wall, but they don't feature anywhere else.
Yeah. So is there a difference in the high growth versus more mature companies and how you approach things?
I think high growth is more open to change, I would say, and to more progress over perfection. In my experience, in the environments that I've worked in, it is more of an iterative approach. People matter as well. So it's a very forward thinking approach. In the larger businesses that I've worked in, tends to be more difficult for change to affect. And of course,
Yeah.
from a change management perspective, it can be controversial. And how do you make everyone aligned? It's harder to shift a big ship than it is
Yeah.
a smaller boat. And I think that is probably the main differences that I've experienced. Not impossible, but your change management program is just a different length. It's just more detailed.
Yeah, that sort of gets into where I wanted to go with this is I saw one idea that consistently shows up in your work is organizational simplicity. That's different for a smaller, high growth company than it is for,
Mm,
like you were just talking about, a more mature,
mm.
staid company. So what does organizational simplicity mean to you? And then I would also ask the follow-up question is a lot of organizations, as they get more mature and bigger, they unintentionally create a lot of complexity. So
Yes.
how do you deal with that? Why does that happen? How does that create the problem?
I truly believe, I think it was Dan Pick who did the mastery autonomy model about motivation. I am a massive advocate for that, is that you need to give people empowerment and autonomy in order for them to do their good work, right? And that's how they make an impact. And that's generally what people are motivated for. And I would argue that most people come to work in order to do a good job. I don't think anyone intentionally wakes up in the morning and say, I'm just going to do a really rubbish job today, and that's it. But in order to get them to be motivated to write impact, you have to have all of the other magic ingredients. So you need to be clear on what does success look like, but very clear expectations so they can, even though you don't need to micromanage them, but you need to be able to point them in the right direction to find the right resource or find the right problem or connect with the right people. So I think when in terms of simplicity, there are times where I've worked in a bigger organization, not a huge organization, where I was asked, I think we were about almost 500 people, and I was asked by my boss in my first week or 2 weeks, could I put together a presentation on, I think it was job architecture. And I said, sure, I'll do that. I'll put together a slide deck for you, presentation. I'll do that for the next company meeting. My follow-up question was, how long have I got to present? And the answer back was, oh, no, you're not presenting. I'm going to present. Okay. So immediately I was like, that is a good example of you're making this really complicated. This should be a simple thing. It should be something that actually I can talk to the business about. It's my work. Not that there was an ownership issue, but it was my work. It's going to be more authentic if somebody who's done it presents it rather than I'm just actually shipping it to you to present. And I felt like it was an inefficiency in my view. I thought this was like, actually, this is really inefficient. Why does it have to go through all of these channels? And I think the more bloated a company can become when you're scaling up, it's a good thing to keep a watch out to see, do 3 people need to make the decision or just one? Or does all decisions have to be made by one person, and is it the same person? It's things like that I think we just need to be watchful of. And that is probably the loudest noise that you would get in scale up, certainly in startup scale ups when it's founder led. And a lot of the decisions, there probably isn't a budgeting process in place or something like that. Most questions go back to the founder. And that's a problem that we've, solved and continuing to solve as we scale, because as we grow, we're understanding that actually we can't have any single points of failure. So it's
Yeah.
those kind of things that you need to be watchful of to make it simple so people can do their job and do it well.
And if you see something that's a problem, speak out, right? Let's talk about it. Yeah. Challenge what you see that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and you've got to have the psychological safety in place in order to do that. And I think
Good point.
that's harder than you think, I would say, for the psychological safety element. Obviously it's rooted in your values and how you value feedback, and is it okay to make a mistake or is it okay to challenge, but it's what you do with that challenge and how you respond to that trickles through the organization to make it safe that you can actually have an opposing view and it's okay.
Yeah. How do you establish that? Just really in your practices? How do you establish safety? It's becoming more and more of a buzzword and a requirement of the younger generations. I want to feel safe. So what does that mean? And how do you communicate that to the team?
I think it's a thing that we continuously keep an eye on, really, as we get new people in the business that perhaps come from different environments, and how we welcome them into the business and show them this is how we feedback. This is, if you want to ask questions, please feel free to ask questions. We give everyone a really safe space. We have a weekly all hands, which is a very safe space for people to present. And it could be an idea, it could be a piece of work, but we really like to see everyone do that. And it's a safe environment. Even if they're not a natural presenter, it's okay. Everyone gets a clap, everyone gets some nice feedback, and it's a good opportunity for them to put themselves out of their comfort zone a little bit. And it goes down really well. we do things like that. And then in our surveys and in our pulse surveys, we measure things like, psychological safety, do you feel able to speak up, are you encouraged for your feedback, things like that. So
Yeah,
we're conscious of it.
I like that. I
Yeah.
like that a lot. I couldn't help to notice in the intro, I was gravitated towards your title, the Chief People Officer
Yeah.
at Tillo. What is that? What does it encompass? Is it just personnel? Is it, I mean, what does that mean at Tillo?
It won't surprise you to hear that people are your most prized assets.
Yes.
They are the most expensive asset as well. So my role encompasses everything in terms of from the whole employee life cycle. So that's attracting the right talent in, retaining the right talent, developing the right talent, but that makes and also working in the right environment. So workplace and culture design on how we connect with people from a social element, taking them away, rewarding them, to how we might recruit, our employer branding, our employer value proposition, and what their whole experience is like, however that long they work at Tillo for. And when they do choose to leave us, if they choose to leave us, they leave with a smile on their face. They feel like they've learned something throughout their journey here. So I'm responsible for all of that, and my team very good at doing all of those elements very well.
Do you do exit surveys?
Yeah, we do. We do.
Of everyone, you demand them. That's good.
Yeah, we do. It's really important for us that we are in a private equity environment. It is high pressured. It can be rewarding. It's not for everyone. We're very honest about we work extremely hard.
Right.
And I've said in many different guises throughout my career, some people want to work on a rocket ship, some people want to work on a cruise ship. Either is fine. And you might actually want to change from cruise to rocket or rocket to cruise, but you've got to understand what both mean. And I think we are definitely rocket ship. And it's not for everyone. We work very hard. We're very clear about our expectations. We expect people to deliver. And if they do, then Tillo is a lovely environment. We have annual retreats, we reward well. And if you ask anyone what people love about working at Tillo, it's the people, it's the environment, it's the culture.
That would be right down your alley. Do you think you learn most from exit interviews or your pulse surveys?
Both, actually, I would say both, and even from candidate data coming in. So when we're interviewing, we think we've got almost 15 roles live at the moment. It's not a huge amount, but we've got a small talent team. But we talk to a lot of candidates. We source a lot of candidates in, and we attract a lot of candidates. And so we understand what the expectation is of the market then to make sure that we are competitive and that the expectations align. And throughout the time here at Tillo, if they're new in role, we do some check-ins, like 30, 60, 90-day check-in to make sure that actually their expectations of coming into Tillo match their experience. We partner with our leaders quite heavily. We will make sure that we understand their business unit very well, challenges, their OKRs and things like that, and how they're focused on managing their people and what's working well, what's not working well. And then, the pulse surveys, we have feedback. We have culture champion awards once a quarter as well. So the whole
I like
team
that.
they can nominate against some fellow Tillians, we call ourselves Tillians,
Okay.
who might be very prevalent in some of our values, and they get a little gift for once a quarter. We have a Rising Star Award. So we've
Ooh, I
got a
like
few
that.
little things throughout the journey and throughout the year that we gives us a good opportunity to get feedback from. Yeah, it's really good actually.
I
Yeah,
mean,
and that's
Tillo's, is it more than it's a global gift card network company?
yes.
I should have done this a long time ago. Tell me a little bit more about the business. That's
So we are about 160, 170 people. We're
okay.
10 years old this year, so we celebrated our 10-year anniversary last month. We're
Congratulations.
predominantly in the UK, but we're also in the US as well, and Cape Town and Australia. And we are expanding through Europe. Gift card API, I think it's hard Who knew that reward cards was such an industry, but it really is. But we've got two businesses, if you like, two customers. We've got the buyers of the gift card. So it could be a direct, you could buy a gift card from, think of like Walmart, for example. You could buy a gift card that will let you spend in Walmart or wherever. But we also partner with the brands. So the more brands that we have on board, the more likely our buyers are to buy from us. And the more buyers that we have, the more brands that want to join us and to partner with us. The connection between, we call it like the power triangle, so consumer, brands, and buyers. And if we can get that, it's really, it's a really good, powerful tool. But more and more brands and companies are using gift card technology as a way to incentivize and reward. So you'll see, so for example, some of the neobanks use this as a cashback scheme, and they might use one of our gift card schemes as part of that reward scheme. Yeah, so it's and top cashback, and yeah, there's many global
Interesting.
brands.
If I get a rewards card, is that treated as income? Just out of curious, from a tax standpoint. I'm just curious.
It depends where you are actually, because in some parts of Europe, it's not considered a benefit in kind, so not taxable, or the threshold is different. In the UK, it's considered, depending on the threshold of the amount, it's considered a benefit in kind. But a lot of, and actually that's where the nuance is, because if it's not a taxable income, then many companies use that to reward their staff.
Sure.
So yeah, it's not a clean answer. It really depends on what the tax law is and where
Right.
they're based.
I've learned something new.
Yeah.
Let me take us back to when you first got to Tillo. It's interesting when every time you go to a place, you're always surprised at some of the things you see. What were you surprised at what you saw? What did you walk into? Was it a mess? What stage of the evolution of the company? Was it just starting? And what were your early big challenges?
So I started almost 2 years ago, and we probably weren't that much smaller than where we are today, but we're about 120 people or so. Weren't private equity owned by then. We had small angel investors, but they were not the majority shareholder. It was a true success story, like very strong profit, very strong revenue, hockey stick of growth through COVID. It was a real success story. And the CEO knew that actually had real intentions, ambitions to grow more, and knew that there will be further acquisitions on the cards, and they really just didn't have the experience of a people leader who had done that. And I did have that experience. So they knew that they needed a chief people officer to come in and lead the people and talent strategy, if you like, with the rest of the executive team. So when I came in, they'd done a really good job on the cultural piece. And a lot of it was focused on making everyone happy and making sure everyone was happy and enjoyed working at Tillo. But, and I'm not being unkind here because I've said this openly, I would say the cupboard was a bit bare. I just think they've done a really good job of growing to 100 people, but the processes behind all of that just were not there. And I knew that it's not a bureaucracy, but I know you need on a foundational level so you can grow, because it's always easier to put these things in place when you're 100 people rather than when you're 500 people. And that's things like hiring process or performance management or job architecture in terms of job leveling, career development ladders, things like that.
Yeah.
That have actually made and compensation philosophy, that's made a real difference. But performance management was the first thing that we did. And we knew that what company doesn't want to be a high performing company? I think that's just needs to be. But the CEO, Alex, he used to say in jest kind of thing, you're either on the bus or off the bus. And that was his kind of version of like, there's a lot to do. You're either on it or you're not. And I just came in and I said, so what color is that bus? And where is it going? How do people know which stop to get on and off? And it was just like a realization that we need to put some words around what we mean by high performance. Otherwise, people are not going to be able to self-select. They're not going to be able to manage their own performance. And so we did a light touch version of, this is what it means to perform. This is what it means to, you're nailing it, you're smashing it. This is where actually it's low performance. You need to do something about it. And then we also referenced as well our behaviors, so which were against our values. So we were making sure really that we weren't having any brilliant jerks. Our culture was as important as the high performance.
Was there a stated mission and a stated vision and a stated value system?
Yeah, yeah. So we basically put in place, it's a 9 box really. So we put in place a matrix of high performance against values, and then we made people understand that. And
Right.
actually it was really well received because people wanted, like I said at the beginning, people want to do their best work, but we just need to tell them what that means. And when they're measured against it's you're not measured and then hit with a stick. You're measured and go, this is what it means, this is how you can do something about it, or keep continuing on the right direction, or these are the goals that come out of it. And it was really well received by managers. It was really well received by the people, that they were getting some qualified, calibrated feedback that they were doing a good job.
So it's tough. I think of you in that role. I'm thinking it's hard for anyone to maintain agility and simplicity while
Yeah.
creating a system, the systems that need to scale.
Yeah, it is hard. I have a great team. And I think the fact that we have weekly touch points with the whole company gives us a good platform to communicate that to them. And we use various communication tools as well. And
You know, people work for raises, praises, and lots of other reasons. How do you know how do you know your people and what they value?
again, I think people will talk with their feet if we're not getting it right. I think so with exit interviews and pulse surveys and listening. And I think the one thing that's loud and clear to us at the moment is that people want to understand, how do they progress and what does that mean to them in monetary terms.
Mm.
So they understand what they're paid now and the leveling and all of that. But they also want to understand is, what's my opportunity to grow with Tillo? What does that look like? And how do I get there? So
Right.
that's something that we are maturing. When we're not there yet, we are maturing that with, like, actually, this is the next progression piece. This is what it means. And we've got promotion criteria, etc. But with promotions, I think it's quite challenging for scale ups because not every single role will have a hierarchy.
Yeah.
And you also don't want to kind of create a tick list of, I've done X, Y, and Z, I'm entitled to be promoted now. It has to be driven by the business. So it needs to be handled delicately, I think, especially when we are driven by budget, we're driven by EBITDA. We don't want to make the business too bloated or too hierarchical and those kind of things. So it's a challenge that we're working through, but we're hopefully going in the right direction.
Traditional performance review is always a question. So are you seeing a change? Are you changing how you do things? What's broken about the old annual review? So you've gone to pulse checks.
Yeah, that's been a topic of discussion for a long time for my groups, and I love hearing when people are, we've done away with annual reviews, and yeah, we just basically have constant conversations. I'm like, okay, good for you. Good
Mm.
for you. I think there needs to be a balance of both, really. So I agree. What's wrong with an annual performance review is it doesn't take into account the whole year. In reality, you can't really remember what you did last month, let alone 11 months ago. You can't. I can't. I can barely remember this morning, but it's you can't, and it's not
Yeah.
validated, and it's just a lot of
Yeah.
cumbersome work, a lot of work for the individual, for the manager who's got 9, 10 reports to do that. And then also, what do you do with that performance review? It just goes back in the drawer. It doesn't do anything.
Oh,
And
that's a big
that's
no-no.
yeah,
That's a big no-no.
yeah, that's the mistake, I think, with outdated annual performance reviews. So we do, when I'm saying it out loud, it sounds funny. We do them every 6 months, but
Oh, much
we
better.
we call like it's called a performance snapshot monthly, which is very light touch. There's no assessment. We advocate for weekly one-to-ones. Or every other week, whatever worked for your team. But we advocate that actually one of those one-to-ones, so it's not about an extra meeting or an extra process. You're talking about, are you on track? Are you on track or not? Does something need attention or not? And so there is a lot, almost like a culmination, a constant culmination. And at the end of the 6 months, it's all of that cumulatively put into, and it is a light touch assessment. We don't ask many questions because we've got the data there. We have our dashboards, we have our performance dashboards of real data for what's happening in the bit, so we can measure performance quite well.
Yeah, the measurement part is the hard part, and ownership without creating the fear or pressure. One of the ways is to have metrics of performance, but those aren't always so easy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We run OKRs here, and your OKRs might not be just your OKR. You could be a key stakeholder in that project, but what about if it's blocked by someone else or some other team over there? You cannot be measured just on that OKR. So the data has to have context.
Yeah.
And things do need to change. When we put our OKRs out at the beginning of the year, things change, the world change. Sometimes we need to pivot our strategy a little bit. So again, context is everything. But what we do when we do our performance management is we calibrate with other managers. So they might do an assessment on some of their team, but we put all of our managers in a room and we ask them to calibrate their performance. So they're thinking about performance in the same way. We don't have anyone particularly generous in one area or is particularly harsh in another. It's a consistent view. So you don't get any kind of confirmation bias or unfair bias.
Okay. A lot of organizations focus on perks and gift cards and
Yeah.
events and parties and service
Yeah.
level cultural initiatives. So, do you have any sort of less visible systems that actually shape your culture that you used in the past? I'm hearing a lot of communication.
A lot of communication, yeah.
How do you handle, let me ask this then. How do you handle someone that's not performing well?
A conversation needs to be had. First of all, we need to understand why, because there's always context. It could be a training issue, it could be a personal issue, it could be actually they're just not capable to do that job. It could be a capability issue. So understanding the reasons why first and foremost, and then working with them on a plan of action. And it could be role misfit. So we need to have a conversation. Perhaps Tillo isn't right for you. Or it could be that they haven't learned this particular element of the platform, so they need some training.
Yeah.
They just need they're unclear of their goals. Or it could be the manager isn't managing them in the right way.
Uh, Communication of expectations, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And personal goals. Yeah. Is there
Yeah.
anything that you deliver that is like a people initiative that you delivered that had a bigger impact than you would have expected?
We have invested significantly in leadership and management training and not just soft skills of how to have difficult conversations. I think we partnered with an external company last year, knowing that we were going into private equity world, knowing that actually the way that we needed to mature on some of the decision makings and we need to toughen our resilience and how we work with each other. So that has had a ripple effect throughout the business, I think, in a really positive way.
Okay.
So that was a significant investment. We're still continuing to work with them, but it's a chance for the leadership team to come out of the business and to work on us as a leadership team, but make it relevant to the business. And I think that, yeah, that's definitely you can hear there's elements being quoted throughout the pockets of the business going, it landed. Cool,
Right.
that's good. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you talked earlier, touched on earlier about elevation, promotion, and often it's the best sales guy that becomes the sales manager. That's not necessarily the best thing. So nice to hear leadership training. See, are there consistent mistakes, or is there a first mistake you always see a new leader making? And can you talk about some of
Well,
the leadership training that you do?
it still surprises me to this day that we have we could have a people manager coming up to us and say, "Oh, the trains aren't running, so this person needs to leave 10 minutes early today. Is that okay?" And it never fails to shock me to go, "What do you think?
Yeah.
In your team, do you feel empowered to make that decision? What would you say?" Because it's those kind of things that you just see. You need to be making those decisions, or they really struggle giving tough feedback. Or if it's a performance management conversation where they've got to have a tough call. I think generally, am I going to regret saying this? Generally, people managers are great at managing good people. Where they find it hard is managing tricky situations. That's probably just human nature, I would imagine.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah. But you need to do that. You can't just be good at managing the good stuff. You have to be good at managing the tough stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Communication seems to solve most everything, I think.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it different being part of private equity? So after you raise capital, you hit a growth stage, or private equity comes in. Is that different from a culture standpoint?
I think it depends on who your investors are. We're very fortunate that it hasn't. I think it's helped mature in areas that we knew that we needed to mature. So decision making, accountability, things like that. But the culture is one of the reasons why they invested in us. Nothing was broken. We are very proud to work in the way that we do. We celebrate once a year. We come all together, and so long.
Even on a bad year?
Even on a bad year. We haven't had a bad year, actually. So last year we took all of the team to Sicily. We flew everyone in to Sicily for a couple of days. That was lovely. This year we're doing something slightly different because we are very spread. So we call it Tillo Fest. We're doing Tillo Fest in Austin and in Cape Town. We have 30 or so people in Cape Town, and then in the UK. So it's almost like a Mexican wave of Tillo Fest. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Austin's a fun town. That'll be great.
Yeah, it will be fun. It will be fun.
Good. And how do you know what people, I asked this before, I'm not sure if I didn't hear the answer or if I just didn't pay attention, but how do you know what really turns your people on? What raises, praises? How do you know that?
It is a survey, but they tell us. So one of the things that I know that they want to understand better is it's the career progression and opportunity to earn. They need to understand better the link between the two. So we know that actually that's an area where we need to improve upon or get better at. In terms of what is good, we're very conscious that we don't disrupt all the good stuff. So we do need to measure all the good stuff as well. So we know that actually the way that we feed back to each other, the culture, the connection, our values, we know that is working and that's landing well.
How do you establish connection? In True Colors, we're very big about self-awareness and building a language where people can communicate across different personalities. How do you make sure that you build trust and connection?
A couple of things I would say. We do some light touch things. So we operate on Slack. So Slack has got this app called, I think it's called Coffee and Collaborate. Or Connect and Collaborate or something like that. And it randomly connects you with someone and you have 15 minutes with them randomly, and you're literally talking about coffee and you're talking about the Knicks or you're talking about the World Cup or something like that. Because trust comes at a fundamental piece first. You have to know that person, right? Really, not the work person, the actual person. So we do things like that. For a new starter, the team will take them out for lunch. Again, that's another way of connecting. Do some social interactions as well. And then it's understanding those trust elements, really. So I think we probably just do bits like that, really, rather than anything bigger. But when we come together and collaborate all together, that's one of our values. Collaboration is key, is one of our values. So we highlight the people that have been awarded the culture champion for collaboration is key, and so highlight some of the examples there, or we invite feedback on how we're living our values and things like that, so people can see as some good role models throughout the business.
So the firm's been incredibly successful. How do you keep everyone's attention on the customer? It's always about the customer, right? What are those trainings, or how do you instill that in the culture?
I think with our weekly all hands, there's a couple of ways that we do that. Our performance data, our business health scorecard, is front and center for our leaders downwards. So we report on that. That sounds really boring and flat, but it actually we do make it quite.
Explain what it is.
Quarterly, we have a quarterly business review. So each area of the business reports on how they've performed and how it impacts our performance, our revenue, our EBITDA, our customer net promoter score, things like that. And then in between those quarterly business reviews, everyone's invited into the office and we put food on and things like that. In between those, we highlight the wins, we highlight key customer growth patterns, Or you have something called, is it Shark Tank?
Yes.
So we have something, a Shark Tank in England is called Dragon's Den. And one of our customers was on Dragon's Den, and it was a small customer at the time, and now is a big customer. And so we all got behind them and watched that and celebrated and sent them some praise. Well done. They got investment from Dragon's Den and things like that. So that our customers are almost front and center everywhere we go. We talk about them a lot. Our account management team are with them physically a lot as well. So and then they come back to the business and present. If something's not going very well, they share that with the product team or the operations team. So we try and solve it for them. We have to, we can't grow without having our customers front and center. So we do that really well. And we have, second year in a row, won Customer Service Excellent Awards. So we make sure that we're assessed against that. So our ops director leads that program.
I like it. Great answer. Let's talk about going forward. So how do you see your role changing? Or let's talk about more, you can take it more vague if you want, the role of HR changing or the people manager changing.
How do I see it changing? I think that it's a really interesting inflection point in the HR industry, in the people industry. There's, with AI, it makes it super interesting. How do we make sure that the AI strategy in the business, we're not dumbing down some of the parts of the business and making sure that actually that strategy is landing? Are we just doing it by accident, or is there a proper strategy to start with? Because there's fear that it could take people's jobs, but could it? Or could it actually make sure that we open up in areas that we don't understand yet?
Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting. How we focus on AI as an industry is super interesting. And if you're not thinking about it now, I think that's dangerous. You need to be thinking about how's that going to affect your team, automation. How do you make sure that you don't lose connection with your people? Goes back right to the beginning of what I was saying. People trust people. So what's the right balance there? So that's super interesting. I think for us at Tillo, as we grow and we open up more locations, how do we still feel connected? And we have that culture of connection. If people are speaking a different language or a different culture, how do we make sure that what's true to Tillo lands well wherever we land? That's going to be a really interesting challenge. And how do we have fun along the way? Growth is challenging, it's rewarding, but you need to have fun along the way. So how do we make sure that doesn't go? Because that's what makes Tillo Tillo. And the more pressure and the more targets you have, it's easy to kind of lose sight of that. But we want to keep it fresh.
The bright orange in you wants to make sure always fun, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It has to be fun. Otherwise, what's the point?
So that one of those great classical trite questions is 5 years from now, if we had you back, what would you hope we're celebrating at Tillo in the broader world of work?
Yeah, 5 years we would have smashed our targets. We would be on our next cycle, I would imagine. I think we would have acquired a few companies along the way. I think we would be global denomination. We would be a really respected, recognized fintech brand. We are in Europe, and I think it needs to be a household name in the States, I think. So that is the 5-year intention. And
How about on the work side and the culture side?
the culture side, it will need to evolve. It will need to evolve, but it should be more about culture add, I would say, rather than culture fit or culture change. I think we just need to make sure that we are conscious of what keeps us wholesome and what keeps. But as we go into new markets or we come up for new challenges or projects or something, we're just going to need to be conscious, like, what else do we need to add or focus more on, I think.
Okay, I'll give you a softball. Maybe this is true because I always find it interesting if the head of HR, or in your case, the chief people officer, is that a C-suite position? Are you on are you on the board?
No, it's that the board is the investment board, but
Okay,
in the executive team,
that's great. I see more of that, and
Yeah.
that sends the signal that the people are important, right? This is a C-suite position, and that's really important.
100%. Everything touches people. If you make a technology change, people are affected. If you implement a new system, people are affected.
Yeah.
You cannot make any decision in the area of the business without people being affected.
Yeah. All right. Let me ask another trite one. What's your biggest challenge going forward, you personally?
Biggest challenge at Tillo?
Yeah, not World Cup, not your Croatian.
No, not my Croatia. I think not losing the authenticity as we grow, not losing what makes Tillo Tillo. I'm conscious that we don't put in too many reportings or data analysis that doesn't actually make a difference. Data's got to tell the story. It's there for a reason, and we're doing that. But I'm think it's going to be a challenge to make sure that we're reporting on the right things rather than reporting it for the sake of reporting it. So busy work. So let's make sure that the work we're doing actually matters and it makes an impact and it makes the boat go faster, as they say, rather than something it's just work for work's sake. Let's make sure that we're doing the right things.
Amen. I got to tell you, I heard a lot of communication and reward. So those are two very good things. So it seems like you've done a great job there. I don't know if there's something else that's really inspiring you, but you've given us a hell of a growth plan and you seem to be managing the people side extraordinarily well. So how do we follow you? The listeners often ask, how do we learn more about Tillo and connect with you?
LinkedIn is where I will definitely post my opinion. And then reach out if you want to connect anything about culture or integration or anything like that. I think it's also to bounce around some challenges because I tell you, the profession can be really lonely. There are conversations that you cannot have with anyone else in the business. And so you need to create safe spaces to say, oh, what do I do here? And if I can be an advocate or a sounding board for someone, then I will be that.
Amen. Great to
Communication
hear.
again.
Communication. That's Hanna Smith, and she said LinkedIn is the place to find her for Tillo. I think there are probably a few Hanna Smiths out there. But Hanna, I want to thank you for joining us and sharing your insights on culture, on leadership, on simplicity, on building organizations where people clearly are thriving and can thrive. And thank you to the listeners. Until next time, keep building your cultures that bring out the best in your people, and check back in for our next podcast. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to True Culture. If you found today's conversation valuable, be sure to subscribe and share the show with your friends and colleagues. For more information about our approach and services at True Colors, visit us at truecolorsintl.com or reach out for a free consultative conversation. And remember, culture isn't just something that happens, it's something you design. See you next time.